The Muslims around the world, they recite the opening, what's called the opening chapter of the Quran. They call it Al-Fatiha, but we've been learning from our dear instructor, international instructor Benjamin Bilal, that originally was called Alhamd, the praise. So I'll recite what we know as Al-Fatiha, and we're going to call it Alhamd, bring it back. But before I say that, we always ask Allah's protection. So let me say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. We ask Allah, God's protection from satanic thoughts and influences. That is, destructive thoughts and influences. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. With Allah, God's name and signature or signs in nature. Most merciful benefactor, most merciful redeemer. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. All praise belongs to Allah, God, creator, evolver, sustainer, ruler over all systems of knowledge, over all that exists. Rahman Rahim, the most merciful benefactor, the most merciful redeemer. Maliki Yawmiddin, master of the day of judgment, a day or time of reflection and separation. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Only you we worship with our continuous devoted focus, attention, and ask for help. Ihdina siratal mustaqim. Guide and keep us on the straight upward path. Siratal ladhina an'amta alayhim ghayril maghdubi alayhim waladdallin. The straight upward path of those you favor, approve of, not those who embrace and use anger or go far, far away from remembering you. Sadaqallahu Azim. Allah, God, speaks the ultimate pure truth. Thank you. Instructor Bilal, I was sharing something that thanks to Nunetics class, I'm getting some insight that I never had before, some intuition that I never had before. So he's taught us that the Nunetics word, the word Nunetics, Nunetics, Nunetics. He says it, told us that the meaning is the scientific meaning of seed letters or consonants that produce root words that turn into branches of knowledge. Well, I thought about that, and I thought about a lot of things we learned in this class, in this Nunetics class, and I asked him, what did he think about this meaning? We don't like to use the word definition because of the ancient Phoenicians. We say the meaning of a word, of something. So I'm going to share this with the class now. My intuition on the word Nunetics. And I wrote a linguistic science that reestablishes the natural meanings for the human sounds called letters. And whatever comment, anybody think anything about it, let me know what you think. I'll read it again. A linguistic science that reestablishes the natural meanings for the human sounds called letters.
I think it's on point.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Instructor, are you here?
Assalamu alaikum. Would you say that again? That's more than, I think I'm gonna say that's on point too. I'm not gonna get, that's on point. I'm trying to write it down. The linguistic. Okay.
Alhamdulillah. I'll read it again.
Okay.
Instructor Bilal has taught us that the meaning of Nunetics, Nunetics, Nunetics or Nunetics, how you pronounce it. He said the meaning is the scientific meaning of seed letters or consonants.
You said a linguistic science that we establishes.
Oh yeah, I was just reciting what we have already as a meaning for nunetics. But I'll say what I came up with late, after I said, was people who are just coming in, they may not know what nunetics means already. And that is the scientific study of the meaning of seed letters, consonants that produce root words that turn into branches of knowledge. That's the nunetics meaning that's in all the books. What I came up with was, well, thanks to Allah, I came up with a nunetics would be, for me, an easy way to understand it is a linguistic science that reestablishes the natural meanings for the human sounds called letters. In other words, we were talking, the instructor was telling us about the ancient people, maybe it was a caveman who would make sounds. And even right now in 2020, if somebody says, everybody knows that they're in pain, right? Or if they say, well, we kind of know something was good, whatever it was. So from that, I said, okay, so we're really understanding the meaning of sounds, or as he would say, frequencies, right? Vibrational frequencies called sounds. And these letters represent certain sounds, sound or sound or b sound or t sound. These sounds is what I think, realizing more and more, the science of these sounds that we call letters. So that's what I came up with. And any comments?
One task, very good.
Alhamdulillah.
I say excellent.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, something, I think that the nunetics brings us into the consciousness, awareness. We hear sounds all the time, but many times we don't have the consciousness of the meaning of the sound, the frequency of the sound, and the vibration of the sound.
Yes, and what I was hearing and feeling was clarity. Clarity, going back to the beginning. I love it.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, we on this rocket ship to the cosmic universe, right?
That's what I hear too. That's what I hear from it too. Is a correct communication, eradicating that falsified ideas that we have, and was exposed to.
And another thing too, I'd like to comment. I've taught English for 20, 30 years, and on various levels, and the scientific aspect of sound is never really discussed unless you were in a highly graduate level. But in terms of just the common everyday student, they're not aware of the significance of the sound and what it really means to the human psychic and the human soul. So I think what you're talking about is very good, very good.
I think that nunetics, like you said, in linguistic science, that reestablished the natural meaning of the human sound called letters, gets us to the point of words make people.
Yes.
We have been miseducated. So it puts us back in clarity with ourselves. At the understanding that we already have in us, called that's fitra, we begin to see and hear, as we was in the womb, begin to see and hear, like my man said, I think it was Ezekiel, different frequencies and sounds that we become more familiar with as we move forward metaphysically. It's like, now that we say, the sciences now, the understanding of the knowledge, the words that are being constructed, we set the whole thing like clay. We take that seed letter. First, it began the binary letters. The binary letters was before, in the beginning, like he was saying, in I. And even as a baby, the baby starts off with like dad, then after a while, dad, then dad. That's how we develop. Now we have the standing point of our life when we can look at things and stand on our own 2 feet, the moral and rational logic, neocortex. I ain't gonna go any further, but I'm saying we're standing on our own 2 feet now. We in Kiam. We're on the right foot and the left foot. The left foot starts with the moral consciousness, and the right foot starts the rational conscious. Putting together an internal election gives us the evidence on how to think, how to glean information, that we go from not from definitions, but we go into descriptions, because everybody can see the same thing, but come away from a different perception of what we've seen. And it gives us the opportunity, the community, the unity to continue to grow, because we learn from each other.
Excellent.
This is just one other point. This is to me, the essence of remake the world, by remaking the word environment.
And if memory serves me right, I think in the fetus, the hearing is the first thing that's developed in the fetal stage of development. The fetus, the hearing is the first thing that is developed.
Okay. Can everyone hear me loudly and clearly?
Yes, sir.
We're in the fetal stage also, you know.
Wow.
So now that I know that all of you are hearing me loudly and clearly, and as Abdullah said, the first stage in the fetal development is hearing and then seeing. According to the Quran, Allah says he created us in the wombs, hearing and seeing. And that's a chronological order, whether you realize it or not. There's nothing really to see in the womb, but there's plenty to hear, because Allah placed that fetal lump right next to the mother's heartbeat. And the first major organ to develop in that human fetus is the heart. So then it also has access to the vibration of its own heart. Yeah. And Allah says that he has not created for any body 2 hearts, but there are 2 hearts operating in the mother's womb. But those 2 hearts are actually 1 heart. And you'll understand that on the metaphysical level at some point in the near future, I'm sure. Let us get this linguistic party started. I'm going to ask all of you to mute your phones. Thank you to our senior instructor, Ahmed Hassan, who did a wonderful job and gave us a wonderful description of what Nunetics is that came off of the top of his own neocortex. I did not contribute to that directly. And this is what I'm encouraging for all of you. I'm encouraging that you take all of what I'm giving you as hints and clues and meanings and all of the rest of that, and begin to formulate your own thoughts around Nunetics so that we can present it in exactly the same way. And the definitive praise belongs to Allah as his property, and he is the guardian, evolver, keeper, sustainer of all systems of knowledge. Thank you once again, and thank you to all of you learners who contributed to this initial conversation, light and loose kind of conversation. Thank you for being that attentive. This is your instructor, Benjamin Bilal, coming at you on this 23rd evening of July 2022. So let us all get situated. All of your phones should be muted now. And I'm going to ask that if you have any questions that you put them into the chat box, but try not to do it while I'm teaching. Put them in the chat box when we are pretty much wrapping up for the evening. Those deep questions, like Habiba asked, I'm going to ask that you save those for your turn during the week when we have the smaller groups of 5, 6, 7 people present, so I can actually max out on your answer. I don't want to do you an injustice by giving you a quick answer that's really not an answer, and that really is not going to be understood by the majority of people here. So try to, when you're in these bigger groups, keep your questions and even your comments limited to what you believe the majority of people can manage. Always see yourself as speaking to brand new people, even if we don't have any, and we have quite a few tonight. But even if we don't, see yourselves as speaking to brand new people. And even if it's a complicated concept, like many of the ones that I brought before you, still try your best to break it down. That's your discipline. That's your what you should be striving to do, is take big concepts. And remember what the intellect does. It takes big concepts and it begins to nibble at it until it breaks those big concepts down into smaller, more manageable, and more digestible pieces. That's what the human intellect is designed to do. That's a wonderful gift.
Excuse me, instructor, you said the day is the 23rd, it's the 24th.
Okay. Thank you for that correction. Just want to see if you were listening. No. Yes, the 24th. All day long. Thank you. July 24th for the record, 2022. Thank you. That's my time and day keeper over there, Celia. Much appreciation for her and for all of you who have joined us. Thank you once again. And let me pull up my notes so that we can again get this linguistic party started. Give me just one moment. And before starting, I'm going to ask that all of you make dua for our senior instructor, Michael Hameen, who is presently hospitalized and just going through some health issues that he, I'm sure, is going to be able to overcome and defeat. So with your duas operating as frequencies going in his direction there in Florida, we ask Allah to heal him and to do what is necessary to bring him back to his full composition, and so that he can join us, inshallah, by this time next week. That's Michael Hameen, if you're not familiar with his name. Long-time learner. He's been with me for, seems like decades, but I know it's been at least 10, 12 years that he's been studying under this method. So here you are. We ask that new people join us just for today, for this particular Sunday, to our UniverCity Online Learning Course, semester number 19. And Celia is right. According to my notes, it is Sunday, July 24th, 2022. We're going to be talking about consonantal connections in the Quran. Consonantal connections in the Quran itself. Consonantal connections involves the interchangeability of consonants. The human being produces sounds from 7 basic areas of the mouth. 7 basic areas of the mouth. Whenever we're examining numbers, I want you to begin connecting those numbers to like numbers in the Quran. Muslims always like to mention that Al-Fatiha contains a very special number of ayat, or verses, and that the number, as you all know, is 7. 7. The Quran speaks about a very special 7. And it doesn't give what that 7 actually is. It only mentions 7. In another place in the Quran, it mentions the 7 skies, or the 7 heavens, the earth and the 7 heavens above it. Many Muslims are not clear on what that 7 represents. The Quran speaks about if the oceans were ink and the trees were pens times 7. Never could you exhaust the words of the Quran, the kalima of the Quran. Another 7. So 7s are replete throughout the Quran, and 7 has been replete throughout the history of religious thinkers and also people who have established mythological concepts. So these are things that you need to ponder, and in pondering these things, you're going to be allowed, by the grace of Allah, to come into much deeper and thought-provoking wisdom. I believe that there's a nursery rhyme that has somebody who's in association with 7 dwarves. Am I correct? Is that Snow White, I believe, and the seven dwarves? So
Snow White and the
seven,
Seven Dwarfs. Snow White
yes,
and the Seven Dwarfs.
indeed. So this number seven is no new number. It's a number that actually represents the spiritual realm, the spiritual level of things. There are numbers that represent the material level. One of those numbers is the number 4. It represents the foundation for material logic. But the number 7 represents spiritual logic. And it is because the number 7 is associated with inspiration that comes down to earth from on high, so to speak, as we say Revelation does, from God, quote unquote, down to humans on earth. So even if you look at the number 7, as we have it here, if I were to make it bigger, you can see that this number 7 begins as a horizontal plane on top, from left to right, a horizontal plane that is symbolic of heaven. And from that symbolic heavenly plane, Allah sends revelation down. That's this line going down the number 7. See, all of these numbers have significance. All of them have deep, deep meanings and insight if you were to study them on a meticulous level, meaning that you ponder these things. Don't just look at them and brush them off thinking that there's nothing there. There is something there in everything that Allah has blessed the human mind to concoct and to produce and to manifest. Wisdom in all of it, not just the language of the Quran. The Quran merely gives us the concise correlation of knowledge so that you can find the greatest levels of wisdom in one place called Al-Kitab, Al-Quran. And Allah has done that throughout history for many different people, many different situations and civilizations and circumstances. Okay, so the people who invented this numeral system, which is called, I believe, the Arabic numeral system, they gave us this configuration of the number 7, which means, again, it starts on heaven and it's cast down to earth, as Allah says in the Quran, to those who were originally created in heaven, meaning Adam, his Zawj, his wife, his companion, and also Iblis was also in heaven. And Allah said at one point, get ye down from here. You see, they were up here. And then Allah said, get ye down from here into the earth. So this is heaven. That's how 7 came to represent a spiritual number and a spiritual quality. And this down here is earth. So that 7 is going to be discovered throughout many things connected to human life and human activity. And the human mouth itself produces 7 core groups, not 7 sounds only, but 7 core groups of sounds. All letter sounds within these core groups can be interchanged with each other. This is the beauty and the majesty of what we're presenting to you as Nunetics. In these 7 core groups, within each core group, all of the letters, all of the sounds that you find in each one of those 7 groups can be interchanged with each other. We'll give you a definite idea of what that means in just a moment. We have it in a graph. And that is irregardless of the language. If you're speaking Mandarin in China, it applies. If you're speaking Kiswahili, it applies. If you're speaking Espanol, it applies. If you're speaking French, if you're speaking German, if you're speaking Russian, if you're speaking any of the languages that are spoken by groups of people around planet Earth, this law of language still applies, because the human being cannot step outside of those 7 core groups of sounds, not with his human mouth, maybe with a sheep's mouth or a goat's mouth or cow's moo, I don't know. I know among humans, we only have 7 core groups of sounds. One of the people in history was a famous linguist called Jacob Grimm. Jacob Grimm, spelled the J-A-K-O-B, I believe, if you're going to do some research into him. He was actually one of the brothers Grimm of fairy tale fame, Brothers Grimm, wrote all of those fairy tales, right? And this particular brother was a linguist. He was a master linguist. And he ended up formulating what later came to be known as Grimm's Law. And Grimm's Law also included the idea that among languages, there is interchangeability of sounds. However, Grimm's Law became isolated to Indo-European languages alone, whereas Nunetics has upped the ante and can actually bring together sounds from groups of people around the planet and still find interrelated messages and meanings. So keep that in mind. Nunetics is based upon the platform that was established by Jacob Grimm, but Nunetics takes it far wider than Jacob Grimm ever thought it could be taken. Because again, it seems as though very often people who have established ideas coming off of the European continent, pardon me, involve themselves very deeply in the concerns of Europe alone and didn't really factor in many of the things and many of the people and the customs and the lingo and all of that that was taking place in most of the rest of the world, because on the most part, European scholarship was a late bloomer on this planet. And we'll leave it at that. All right. So we understand that the junior doesn't always see the full scope that the seniors might have available to them. But we thank Allah for what his contribution was, because if it weren't for his contribution, I don't think I would have been able to formulate what we're calling now the Nunetics method. It's predicated upon his discoveries in language. And he'll tell you himself, when you study him, that he didn't invent it either. he got some hints and clues from other linguists who were toying around with the idea. None of us are actually the original or the originators of these kinds of methods. It's actually Allah, as he says in the Quran. It is Allah who is teaching all of you. So we can't claim credit for that. Doesn't matter if I die and my name is never attached to this method. It wouldn't matter at all to me, because it's Allah's property, as is everything else in this universe. So the human mouth, we repeat, produces 7 core groups. Keep that word in mind, core groups of sounds. All of these letter sounds within these core groups can be interchanged with each other, no matter what the language. Vowels that are situated as the first letter in a word are actually considered to be consonants in Arabic. So if it falls anywhere else in an Arabic word other than the first letter of the word, then it's to be considered a vowel. Whereas if what you're perceiving to be a vowel, such as A, E, I, O, U, if it falls in the beginning of an Arabic word, as it does in the name Allah, Allah, the A falls first, that A is not a vowel. That second A, Allah, that one, where you have to open your mouth, Allah, that's a vowel. But Allah, that one that has to come from the deep recesses of the throat, is a guttural consonant if it's placed in the beginning. So keep that in mind also. Vowels that are situated as the first letter are actually consonants in the Arabic language. These 7 sounds, they represent what Imam W.D. Muhammad referred to once as the soul of the letter, the S-O-U-L of the letter. Did you know that letters had souls? He called it the soul of the letter. What did he mean by that? He meant that if you take any one of these consonantal sounds and you subtract from it the vowel sound of A, E, I, O, U, or A, E, O in Arabic, you take that vowel sound away, you're not going to adequately hear what that letter has to offer you. So whereas we say in the English language, the letter B, and we think that's that letter that we write as B, but it is actually that letter B as a consonant, but it has the vowel E attached to it. B, I, those are vowels attached to those consonants. C, that has an E vowel attached to the S sound. K, that has an A sound as a vowel attached to the K sound. But the soul of that letter is just K, or B, or T, or S. Just cut off the vowel sound, you have the soul of the letter. Now, the word soul and the word core are consonantally connected. Stay with me, new people. I promise you, you won't be lost for long. The word soul, with the two consonants being S and L, and the word core, with the two consonants being C and R. Remembering now, listen with your good ears. The letter C is actually the S sound. English obscures that fact. In reality, there's no such letter as C, because it's going to be pronounced as either an S or a K. An S or a K. Think the word circus. This C in the beginning of circus is pronounced as an S, and this C in the middle of circus is pronounced as a K. There's no other way to pronounce the letter C in English, because it is a fabricated language, because English is a language that was concocted to speak to secret society types. That's what it's for. To speak to secret society types who were in or occupying positions of leadership in the world, and who had to speak to each other without the common knucklehead masses of people knowing what they were talking about. So they used the certain words, and they used the certain consonants and certain sounds that the higher ups understood the wisdom behind, but the lower downs had no clue. They remained uneducated in the language. That's what makes language so important. And that's what makes the revelation of the Quran such a majestic level of justice on this earth to common people like you and me. Because Allah took language and he reconfigured it, and he re-inspired language and put it in the mouth of Bedouins in the Middle East. Now he's putting it in the mouth of Bilalians or African Americans and other people who have been out of the loop of world leadership. And it's the language that's going to help configure our brains to once again step into the role of world leadership, but not as racist people, not as people putting the emphasis on skin color or some continent that we have some past glorified history in, such as Africa or somewhere in Asia. That's not what the Quran is for. The Quran has nothing to do with where you were born, situated, or influenced in terms of your being on planet Earth, because the Quran is not even an earthly revelation. It's a cosmic revelation, which means that the information that Allah put within the Quran is connected to phenomenon taking place in the very cosmos itself, outside of the regions of any one of these planets. It's cosmically situated in terms of its substance, and that substance is contained in how those letter frequencies are registering in your human brain. We're going to get into that in a moment. Now, I know I've gone deep. I hope you brought your deep sea diving gear with you. I have a tendency to jump way into the ocean sometimes, as some of you know. All right. Don't fear getting wet. Water is a necessity for life. So we were talking about core groups. This is the essence of what Numetics is as a method. Those 7 groups are given here in the English alphabet system as well as in the Arabic alphabet system. Vowels are called breath sounds because you have to open your mouth in order to pronounce vowels. A, E, I, O, U. No parts of the mouth are able to touch when you're pronouncing a vowel sound. In Arabic, these 3 vowels would be fatha, which is the A sound, Kesra, which is the I sound, and Dhamma, which is the U sound. If I elongate them, then Fatha becomes A instead of A. It becomes A. The Kesra becomes E instead of just I, like in the word bit or pit or sit. Everyone's phone should be muted. I'm going to do it one more once, and please keep them muted. All right. And the Dhamma sound, instead of just being like in put or soot, it becomes oo sound, the elongated oo sound. That's the Dhamma. And each one of these Arabic vowels has a meaning unto itself. The Fatha, A sound or Ah sound, like father, is related to all things open, because you have to actually open your mouth wide in order to pronounce the sound of the Fatha, Ah or Ah in most cases. So it represents concepts that are open for all to investigate. I'm giving you already some deep insight into how to read the Quran going forward. Ah, just like when you come up with an aha moment, that means Allah gifted you with something, some inspiration. Ah, I see. You say, I see now, because it's open for you to see. The Kesra, with its more closed mouth sound. In fact, the word Kesra means to bite down on something. So it's the closing of the mouth. And that represents what is taking place in the human intellect as it ponders information. You can be sitting there thinking about something deep. You see the word deep, it has that elongated E. So what I'm telling you is not relegated only to the Arabic language. It's a universal principle of knowledge, these three sounds. Kesra, again, when you're thinking with the intellect on something. Thinking with the intellect on something. And someone has to ask you, what are you thinking about? Why you look very involved in that thought, but they can't see what the thought is. You have to verbalize it. You have to tell them what you're thinking. Oh man, I was just thinking about this thing. I was in this class yesterday, the Nunetics, and he said, and she said, and they said. Oh, see, now you verbalized what you were thinking in secret. You see the E sound in secret? You see those E's operating? Because it's something that the intellect can discover, but keep to itself until it's ready to reveal. You see those E's in there? Reveal. And then the Dhamma is when you have become so engrossed in thinking, in utilizing the intellect, that those thoughts and that information now is so comfortable in your mind that it has become what we call second nature. That's when it has reached a level of activation in the human soul. You see that O sound in English? That's the oo sound in Arabic. It's talking about the soul. You don't even have to think about it anymore. It's second nature. You don't have to spend all of that time studying. I know this thing, we say like the back of my hand. Right? Yeah, that represents information that registers on the human soul. So when you see words in the Quran that are preponderant with these particular sounds, like al-Fatiha, see, al-Fatiha, see those open A's, because it means the opening. Then Allah calls you the Muslimin. In the muttaqeen, you hear that een sound at the end of those words. It's because you can't be that thing unless you're pondering deeply. So when Allah says hudan lil muttaqeen, guidance for the possessors of taqwa, the possessors of taqwa are supposed to be those who are pondering taqwa, what that means. What does Allah mean by that? How can I be a better muttaqi? See? That's what that Kesra is doing. It's not just you saying I have taqwa, it's you playing the part in your thoughts and in your behavior of somebody who's constantly pondering. Oh, I see what that means. Let me implement it. All right, let me go for the next piece of information. What does Allah mean by that? Oh, I see what he means. Let me implement it. You see, That's muttaqin. And then the dumma are those who have reached the stage of expression which allows the spiritual nature to dominate. The name for the stars, Allah calls it El-Buruj. See, Buruj. Why? Because that's way up there. It's spooky. It's spiritual. We don't even know. We got to keep studying that before it can become something that our intellects can possess. However, it is still having a remarkable level of influence over our human souls, the pondering of the stars. Even though we don't know what it is, it's still affecting us on the soul level. All right, so that's the first group. The second group are called the labials, also pronounced the labials, and the LAB is indicative of the LIP, the lip. B and P are interchangeable. So labial is lip, the lip sounds. And they are the letters in English, the B, because your lips have to come together to pronounce B. F, your bottom lip has to touch the back of your two top front teeth to say F, or at least the bottom of the teeth, F. The P comes together to explode, P, P, the two lips. The V, again, almost like the F, where the bottom lip has to come in contact with the top two front teeth to say B, V. You can also call it a bilabial because it utilizes the teeth, or some people would say a dental labial because it utilizes the teeth as well as the lip. But to keep things simple, I just call them labials. W, the wow, see, wow. The lips come together. In Arabic, we got ba, fa, wow. Those are labials also. And that's the second group. The third core group are called gutturals because they come from the gutter of the throat. They are throat sounds, sometimes at the beginning of the throat, sometimes from the back of the throat. So in our English, pardon me, we have the hard C, like in core. We have the hard G, like in gorilla, throat sounds, gutturals. We have the hard H. Ha. When you pronounce it correctly, it comes from the back of the throat also. Ha, ha. The same thing with the J sound. J, you can feel the force coming from the throat to express that sound, J. Also K, which is the same as the hard C, K sound. The X, see, the X from the back, and the Y when it's pronounced as a consonant in terms of your, see, that your. Remember, at the beginning of a word, it's going to be a consonant, your. In Arabic, we have the Aleph, that open sound, Aleph. That's a guttural from the back of the throat. Allah. Ain also is from the back of the throat as a guttural. The Ha is from the back of the throat, and that's both Ha's, the heavy Ha and the light Ha in Arabic. The heavy Ha, like you have in Hayya ala salat, and the light Ha, like you have at the end of the word Allah. Allah, that also comes from the front part of the back of the, or towards the back of the throat. Kaf, obviously, is the Arabic K. Qaf is the Arabic Q. So Q and Qa comes from back there. Okay, Q actually should have been added here also in the English version. So we'll put that there, right? And the Jim, which is the Arabic J, again, from the throat. All right, I keep saying back of the throat. It doesn't have to necessarily be the back of the throat, but it's the throat area. Look up pictures of these things online, pictures of the human throat, and look at these different sections that we're talking about. The fourth core group are liquids, and there are only two of them. Liquids are tongue sounds. So that would be the L, where the tongue rises to the top palate to say L. And the only other letter is R, where the tongue rises also, but it doesn't become stuck at the top. It trills. R, like the Spanish rolling R. And in Arabic, that would be the letters Lam and Ra. Lam and Ra. They're called the liquids. Number 5 in the core groups of sounds are the nose sounds, N-O-S-E, nose sounds. And there are only 2 letters for that, essentially. They are the M, and if you say it to yourself right now and hold that sound, you'll feel it reverberate in your nostrils. That's why they call nasal sounds. M, and also N, you'll feel it reverberating in your nasal passages. And of course, in Arabic, those letters are mim and nun. Mim and nun, nose sounds. Number 6, we have the core group of sounds called dentals. That's because the teeth are involved in some way or another. So in English, it would be the letter D as well as the letter T. In Arabic, it's going to be dal, that letter, the letter ta, the letter tha, the letter tau, the letter dal, or some people say dod, and then dod. Those are the dentals in the Arabic letter system. And lastly, as a core group of sounds, we have what are called whistling fricatives, also known as sibilants. And if you pronounce them correctly, you'll hear a slight whistle when you say these letter sounds. They are the soft C, like in circle. So you can hear the whistle, circle. Of course, the S, which is the same sound, soft. See, that is soft. You hear the whistle. The Z sound, you hear the whistling fricative, right? Fricative just means friction. There's a friction there, right? The Z sound, zoo. The SH sound, sh, sh. The TH sound, th, th. I thought about you today. It begins with a whistling fricative. Th. But that whistling fricative can also be at some point a dental in the sound of the. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ or ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ, depending on the word being expressed from the Quran. Dental. And you have the letter sin, which is the S, and another variation on the S sound called the sod. The word salah begins with a sod and not a sin. The word sirat, it's siratul ladina an'amta alayhim, as-sirat, sirat al-mustaqim, begins with a sod, not a sin. The word iblis carries the letter sin at the end of it, iblis. The letter Z or za, the Z sound, is also a whistling fricative, as well as the SH combinations of sounds in sh or sheen. The word for the sun, shams, as shams has the sheen. So when you get this replay, you start replaying it and, rewinding it or pushing the thing back so you can go over these and maybe take notes along the way. Now, every one of these 7 core sounds have an emotional connection with the human psyche's subconscious mind. Repeating, every one of these 7 core sounds, they have an emotional connection, not an intellectual connection, an emotional connection with the human psyche's subconscious mind. Most of the things that we do during the course of any given day is connected to activities taking place in the subconscious mind, not the conscious mind. Science tells us that the subconscious mind occupies 95% of your daily thinking, or if you can call it thinking. The things that we do every day are connected to subconscious motivations. And most of those things that we do that are based in the subconscious, we don't even remember we did because they're not conscious actions. If you live in a home like we do that has an upstairs and a downstairs, Can you tell me off the top how many times you went up and down those stairs today? If you're an active person in the house, you don't know. You had to be consciously thinking about the first time when you got out to bed and came downstairs to the kitchen, and that's one. Okay, you went back up to go to your room or office or go take a shower. That's two. I mean, you really have to put your conscious attention to those activities in order to be able to recount how many times you did each of those things. You don't know because they're the subconscious mind. That's the subconscious mind doing that for you. The subconscious mind is involved in things that are repeated over and over again until they become what? Second nature. They become a part of your soul to do those things. And very often we do things and we even say things that we don't even remember saying. You hurt somebody's feelings. Well, say, when did I tell her that? You told her that 3 days ago. And she said, that's the 5th time in a row that you, pardon me. I didn't even realize I was talking to her like that. Or looking at her like that, yeah, because these things that we do over and over again become relegated to the subconscious portion of the human psyche, the subconscious mind. And they become so ingrained that we call them second nature. And when they become second nature as behaviors in you, they are then affecting your human soul. That's why people get rewarded and punished. It's because they are working against, in many cases, the productivity that Allah created your soul to be able to operate upon. When your soul ceases to become productive because you become satisfied with habitual things that are actually responsible for your demise, for the fall of all of that excellence that Allah clocked into you, then all of that becomes your soul's burden. So Allah is not going to punish your body. What did your body do? Why should you die and Allah bring this flesh and blood back here and punish it with fire? Why? What did your body was totally obedient to you during all of the instances throughout the course of your life. If I say raise my right hand, my body doesn't have any separate freedom to say I don't want to raise my right hand today. As long as I'm able to do it and my mind commands it to be done, then the body's going to follow suit. So why would Allah destroy this body or punish this body? I think there's a hadith of the Prophet also. It says that a bear, B-I-E-A, came by him and his companions, and it was the dead body of a person who was notoriously anti-Islam. And it says the Prophet stood up for him. And his Sahaba asked him, why would you stand up for that guy? He was a nut. He was causing hell on earth for us. And the Prophet said, well, his body was innocent. Isn't that beautiful? Yeah, I can live with a hadith like that. He said, no, the body wasn't what committed that crime. That was just his servant doing what he told him to do. It's the one inside that body that Allah is going to square away with, not the body. Don't think about yourself as leaving planet Earth and dying and being somewhere where you have to be physically tortured and contorted and all of that, and chains put around your arms and your neck and then a brace and you can't look down, and all of these things that they have caused us to believe the Quran is speaking to, and the Quran is not speaking to any of that physical level of pain, torture, or fire. It's speaking metaphysically to the minds that have become awakened enough to be able to decipher those higher meanings. And if Allah is going to punish you, believe me, it's going to be much worse in your life than people who suffer from physical fire, being burned by physical fire. Allah doesn't have to burn you by physical fire for you to be burned in the sense that Allah knows how to reach you and burn you. You've seen people disintegrate right in front of you in less than 10 years. They go from being a PhD scholar to being a babbling idiot because they were following internal prompts and vibrations and frequencies that they should never have consigned themselves over to. Somebody watching porno for the last 20 years and he ends up being a rapist. You're going to blame his body for that? Or you're going to blame the things that that internal guy sent him in the direction of? So why would Allah burn up his physical body? It wouldn't be justice. So we're talking about what makes the internal human tick. what makes that internal human being do the things that he and she do and say what they say and think what they think and feel the way they feel. Allah has put all of those components within the control of the average one of us as human beings. And that's what he's holding us responsible. And that's the guidance that the Quran came to give us so that we can learn to manage, control, and discipline all of those internal levels of our development. And it's not a difficult thing to do. What's difficult is to remain corrupt. That's where the difficulty is. And that's why you deserve punishment if you stay corrupt, because Allah made it much harder for you to be corrupt than for you to be righteous. So the subconscious mind that we're speaking about, the psyche, it controls our emotions as well as what's taking place in the memory bank, the things that we happen to hold on to psychologically. Whatever impacts our emotions, if it impacts our emotions, it's going to cause the longest lasting memories in the psyche. And those things can be good or those things can be not so good. Many of us remember when we first got married. But those of us who have been divorced, if it was an ugly divorce, we remember that also. They can tell you the exact day, the exact time. They can even recount how they were feeling. And in fact, when you remember something, the feeling of it can come back even in a much more vicious and hurtful way than when it actually happened. When you keep revisiting bad emotions. Those emotions build up to become worse than it was when the thing actually happened. And people are sitting around wondering why you all bent out of shape and out of the frame and all that, because you keep thinking on it. And when you think on it, it expands. Whatever you give your attention to expands. That's the law of physics. Stop giving your attention to it is the key. So it's going to cause emotional promptings in the psyche, in the subconscious. If it's good and you keep thinking on it, then that goodness, that good feeling is going to expand. And every time you see that person who brought about those wonderful memories for you, whether it was mama and how she treated you growing up, or dad, how he went and played football with you the first time, all of that. You said you were a middle-aged man, and you remembering when you're sitting there with your father, he got his little gray hair and his beard and all that, and he's telling you you're walking on one leg, kind of limping because he got a little arthritis and that. But you two are sitting there just what they say, chewing the fat, talking about the way we were. You know, yeah, I remember Dad, I was 10 years old, he threw that football hit me in my face, I couldn't catch it. And now he's a football star, ain't he? See, but he remembers his father giving him that opportunity to see what kinds of things he liked, the things he didn't really care for, that kind of thing, because it was emotional. And the more he thinks on it, or the more she thinks on that good moment, then the concentration on it, the attention that they're giving to it is going to cause that good feeling to expand. I'm giving you the keys for a good life. And I'm also handing you the keys for moving yourself away from a negative life and experience. We do not have to sit around here suffering things just because they did happen. How they happen and how they affect us from this point on is solely in our charge. All sounds, we're still talking about letter sounds. All sounds are frequencies. Remember that. And the English word frequency is consonantally connected to the Quranic Arabic word furqan. You can see it in the F sound that you have in frequency, the F sound in furqan, the R in frequency, the R in furqan, the Q in frequency, and the Q in furqan. That AAN is a suffix. The UENCY is a suffix in the word frequency. from the smaller word frequent, which means to do a thing or to experience a thing over and over again. If you frequent the neighborhood tavern, those folks know you. As soon as you come in, the bartender say, "Hey, give me a martini, Joe's here," right? Because you're always there. You frequent that place. So anything that visits and revisits a place is called frequency. That's what these invisible signals do as vibrations inside of you, inside of your mind, especially in regards to what's taking place in the subconscious portion of the mind, which is again where the emotions and the memories are situated. The word Furqan alludes to that which is discriminating, meaning it doesn't let everything in. And differentiating, it knows the difference between things that it likes, that it wants to entertain as company. Just like when people visit you, you don't let everybody in. Did you let that Avon lady in the first time she rang your bell? The brother probably did. But you women, you're not just opening up your door because somebody rang the bell and want to sell you a vacuum cleaner. And if you open the door, or look through the peephole or whatever you have, you know, we grew up in the project, so we had peepholes, right? You didn't just open the door as some stranger out there. You didn't want them visiting you. And some of them you tell, and don't come back to my door again, because you don't care for them visiting you frequently, especially. Right? So Furqan has that same illusion. It has that same connection in logic, that it represents those frequencies that are discriminating in you and that are differentiating and saying, this is bad company. I don't want to keep this company anymore. And you move away from that particular frequency in that person we're talking about. Allah calls the Quran Al-Furqan because it does the same thing. It invites in the frequencies that are contributing to your human excellence, and it distances you from frequencies that are anti-development. With the Furqan as frequencies, we're talking now about differentiating patterns of electromagnetic signals in the brain. So we're going sci-fi for a moment, just so that you can expand your mind, expand your views and your thinking. Now, don't come here for entertainment. Come here for inner attainment. This is not entertainment. I'm not the Temptations and James Brown and Diana Ross and the Supremes. I don't do that act. There's many, many teachers and leaders and imams and muftis and sheikhs and priests and rabbis out there who are entertainers. Professional entertainers, and that's what they do every Friday, every Saturday, every Sunday. They entertain the people and they hope they'll get paid big time for doing so. That's not what this is. This, in its purest form, is education. Pardon me for one moment. I'm not sure why Nasheed still cannot get in. Give me just one moment, please. Patience is truly a virtue. And from now on, in fact, I'm going to ask Bayina to remind me to send you.
Alaikum, brother, man.
Alaikum salam. Are you in?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I did get in after you send the link to me.
Oh, okay. I didn't see you sitting down there. I got you. Okay. But I'm going to ask Bayina anyway to have a list or to develop a list of names of email addresses and names attached to them, so that in these instances, you'll have her email and her text to text her, so that I don't have to be interrupted. In the future, that's the way we'll handle that. So we're going to get more and more excellent as we go along. I really wanted you to be in the class, so I was going to stop a second time and send it back to you, but good to see you. Okay, Alhamdulillah, this is wonderful. So we were leaving off talking about the concept of Furqan being one of the names of the Quran itself, Al-Furqan. It speaks about it in the ayat referring to Ramadan, of all places, because Ramadan is designed to resituate your frequencies. All right. Yeah, Ramadan is designed to situate those things that you visit over and over again that you should stop visiting, like eating so much, drinking indiscriminately, talking obsessively about nothing, cussing and fussing when there's no anger involved. You just, man, you don't tap that bitch over there and that hoe, you know, that kind of stuff I'm talking about. There's some of us who do that regularly. It has become second nature, and we've got to cut that out. And Ramadan provides the heat. And you know, heat will separate. Cold brings things together. When it gets cold, you want to be around people. Oh, man, hug me. But when it gets hot, man, get away from me. See, heat separates. You understand what I'm saying? So that's what Ramadan means. It means heat. All right. So we've talked over and over again in the course of these 19 semesters about the triune brain theory. Tri means three, triune means three-part brain. And this is the theory postulated by a person whose name you'll see in just a moment. But he said that the brain is separated into three brains. He called it three brains in one. The first brain to develop in the human head is called the lizard brain, or R complex reptilian brain, also known as, and it is the brain stem and the cerebellum. See this red portion right here? This is the brain stem that attaches to the human spinal column, which regulates your nervous system. So your first brain, when the human brain was developing, was this brain. It was the same brain that developed in all reptiles, which tells us that reptiles more than likely were here first, even before the common set of animals that you're used to seeing. The reptile brain came first, and it controls your fight or flight instincts. And fight or flight instincts don't have time to sit and think about, or think about how to feel about a present danger. Somebody pulls a pistol out on you on the subway. You don't have time to think about how you feel about it. That's a different part of the brain, the emotional brain. You don't have time to think about, well, let me see if I can remember that kata move from the martial arts class I took 23 years ago. You don't have time to think like that. Was it this way? Was it that way? Was it, you know, praying mantis? And this guy done been shot at you. No, this brain says, without you thinking about it, do this.